This week, the White House sent shockwaves through global diplomacy, sending a message that reverberated far beyond Washington's corridors of power. In a move that stunned allies and adversaries alike, the U.S. effectively acknowledged a Russian victory in Ukraine, signaling a dramatic recalibration of its stance on the conflict. The announcement, delivered after tense Berlin negotiations, marked a dramatic shift in American foreign policy. For months, behind closed doors, diplomats had debated the costs and consequences of continued support. Once the bedrock of Western support, the U.S. now pushes for a peace many see as a concession to Russian aggression. The sense of loss and uncertainty is palpable among America's closest partners. President Trump, newly returned to office, has made ending the war a top priority, arguing that prolonging the conflict only deepens Ukraine's suffering. He insists that a negotiated settlement, however imperfect, is the only realistic path forward. Washington frames this as pragmatic acceptance of battlefield realities, citing static front lines, mounting costs, and a war that has ground into stalemate. Officials point to the immense human toll and the strain on Western resources. European allies are reeling, with some quietly agreeing the war is unwinnable, while others, especially in Eastern Europe, see this as a dangerous betrayal. The debate has exposed deep divisions within NATO and the EU. The unity that defined the West's initial response has fractured, replaced by anxiety and strategic recalibration. Leaders now face difficult questions about security, credibility, and the future of the alliance. For Ukraine, the declaration is a devastating blow. The sense of abandonment is keenly felt on the streets of Kyiv and across the country. President Zelensky rejects any notion of ceding territory, but now faces the prospect of standing alone. His defiance is matched only by the uncertainty of what comes next. The Ukrainian people, who fought for nearly 3 years with Western backing, are left with anger, disbelief, and a grim determination to resist. Their resilience is being tested as never before. The psychological impact on the nation is profound, as the promise of unwavering support fades. For many, the future is uncertain, but the will to endure remains unbroken. The seeds of this policy shift were sown months ago, when President Trump publicly urged Russia and Ukraine to declare victory and end the bloodshed. His "let both claim victory, let history decide" mantra became the centerpiece of a relentless diplomatic push, bypassing traditional channels in favor of personal deal-making. Trump's confidence in persuading Putin to a ceasefire is matched by his sharp criticism of Ukraine's leadership, accusing Zelensky of incompetence and manipulating U.S. aid. This personal animosity complicates negotiations, intertwining peace efforts with political grievances. Now, all eyes turn to a planned Trump-Putin summit in Budapest, a symbolic venue, given Hungary's uneasy relationship with the EU. U.S. and Russian advisors, led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, are laying the groundwork for this high-stakes meeting. The world watches, uncertain if this gambit will bring peace or simply cement Russia's battlefield gains. As diplomats prepare for the summit, the threat of renewed violence looms. Trump's strategy mixes overtures for peace with threats of sending advanced Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine if talks fail, keeping all sides off balance. Russia, meanwhile, escalates with missile strikes, signaling it will negotiate only from a position of strength. Trump has floated a controversial weapons trade, Tomahawks for Ukrainian drones, treating military aid as bargaining chips. This transactional approach complicates the path to a clean peace, raising questions about American intentions. The Budapest summit is the focal point, with both sides maneuvering for advantage. Every move is scrutinized as the world waits to see if fragile diplomacy can avert a new phase of war. Russia's willingness to talk peace is driven by strategy, not reconciliation. The Kremlin is preparing to declare victory on the 3rd anniversary of its invasion, regardless of the actual terms. This is about narrative, crafting a story of triumph for domestic and international audiences. Russian propaganda pushes the idea that the West betrayed Ukraine, aiming to sow despair and division. By echoing Trump's criticisms of Zelensky, Moscow amplifies its message and erodes Ukrainian morale. With a land bridge to Crimea secured and Ukraine's NATO path blocked, Putin seeks to lock in gains and pivot to internal challenges. Declaring victory now lets Russia rebuild while projecting strength against the West. For Ukrainians, the U.S. declaration is more than politics. It's a sentence to uncertainty and loss. Each announcement from abroad ripples through daily life, deepening the sense of vulnerability and fear for the future. The war's cost is measured in shattered lives and a generation scarred by violence and displacement. Families are forced to abandon homes, children grow up in shelters, and the fabric of communities is torn apart by relentless conflict. The front lines remain static, echoing the grim stalemate of World War I. Soldiers endure bitter cold and mud, holding positions that rarely shift, while the world watches and waits for a breakthrough that never seems to come. Ukraine's government privately admits it cannot retake all occupied territory. 85% of annexed lands remain under Russian control. The harsh reality is a daily reminder of the immense challenge ahead and the limits of military power alone. Soldiers fight on, exhausted and outgunned, their struggle now one of survival. Supplies run low, morale is tested, and every day brings new risks, yet their determination to defend their homeland never wavers. The psychological toll is immense, but the spirit of resistance endures. Communities rally together, supporting both soldiers and civilians, refusing to let despair take hold even as the war drags on. Many Ukrainians see any peace deal that sacrifices land as a betrayal of those who died defending it. The memory of the fallen fuels a fierce resolve to hold on to every inch of their country, no matter the cost. This sentiment complicates any political settlement, as public will clashes with geopolitical realities. Leaders must navigate a minefield of emotions, balancing international pressure with the demands of their people. Amid the maneuvering, First Lady Melania, Trump's independent efforts to return abducted Ukrainian children offer a rare glimmer of hope. Her actions highlight the importance of compassion and the power of individual initiative in times of crisis. It's a reminder that, beyond strategy, the war is about human lives and suffering. Every story of loss and resilience shapes the nation's future, and the world cannot afford to look away. The U.S. policy shift has jolted Europe, sending shockwaves through capitals from Paris to Warsaw. Governments are now forced into a rapid reassessment of their security strategies, scrambling to adapt to a new reality. Behind closed doors, unity is fraying as leaders weigh the costs of a war that seems unwinnable without American support. Some question whether Europe can truly stand on its own. The crisis has sparked a push for European strategic autonomy, with increased defense spending and urgent calls to modernize military capabilities. Across the continent, efforts to build up arms production are accelerating as factories work around the clock to meet new demands. The goal is clear: a credible deterrent against future Russian aggression, and a show of strength to reassure nervous allies. Even if America steps back, Europe must be ready to defend itself and its values. Eastern European nations, haunted by history and memories of past invasions, see the U.S. pivot as an existential threat to their security and independence. They warn that appeasing Russia invites more aggression and urge the West not to repeat the mistakes of the past. These countries are pushing for a stronger EU and NATO coalition, demanding concrete commitments and unity. But these demands are deepening rifts within the alliance, as not all members agree on the path forward. Kremlin-backed propaganda exploits these divisions, amplifying doubts and mistrust among European citizens. Russian media paints pro-Ukraine leaders as enemies of peace, fueling polarization and confusion. This narrative, echoed by some in Washington, further complicates the transatlantic relationship. It undermines public support and political will, making it harder for leaders to act decisively. Europe now faces a two-front battle, supporting Ukraine militarily, while also maintaining unity at home. The fight against disinformation is relentless, as truth becomes another casualty of war. The continent braces for a difficult winter, both literal and geopolitical, uncertain of what the next chapter will bring. As 2025 ends, the world stands at a crossroads, with Ukraine's fate and Europe's security in the balance. A peace deal freezing current front lines may halt the bloodshed, but it would formalize one of the largest territorial seizures in Europe since World War II. Such an outcome would leave Ukraine fractured and vulnerable, and send a dangerous message to authoritarian regimes worldwide. The principles of sovereignty and inviolable borders would be deeply undermined. The upcoming Trump-Putin summit in Budapest will test whether diplomacy can deliver a ceasefire or trigger renewed conflict. Ukraine's resistance has awakened Europe to the need for collective security, but wavering U.S. support injects deep uncertainty. The next chapter depends on whether the West can forge a sustainable security framework, or if today's fragile peace is merely a prelude to greater conflict. The stakes could not be higher.